for the food access and affordability for all session, pardon me. So food insecurity is the inability to access food in a consistent manner, resulting in reduced quality and variety of diet. This hunger is often the result of a bigger issue at the state and national level, economic instability. Many families have to make choices on a daily basis, whether to pay for rent, pay for utilities, pay for medical bills, or to buy groceries. According to the 2018 Hunger in America report, or excuse me, Hunger in Montana report, which comes out every 2 years, food insecurity for Montana households in 2017 was at 11.4%, and very low food security was just below 4%. Now, when we compare that to the national level, the prevalence of food insecurity in 2017 was at 11.8%, and very low food security was at 4.4%. So we're pretty comparable to the national. So other barriers with access to food may be transportation or living within a food desert. Because Montana is a rural state, a food desert is defined as having no access to fresh fruits or vegetables within a 10-mile radius. Now, we all live in Montana, hopefully. So we can picture Montana. It's a very, very large state. It's very beautiful, but within that beauty comes a lot of areas between towns. And so the Indian reservations definitely fall within those sparsely populated areas. And so for many of these secluded towns, there are small markets that offer limited access to, sorry, I didn't realize you were gone. Limited access to fresh fruits and vegetables. They're often expensive because it takes a while, or it's a long area to travel. Or they have access to packaged foods from gas stations, or they also maybe have a bar where they can have some fried foods available. Now, from a nutrition standpoint, we all know that fruits and vegetables are high in fiber. They provide us with vitamins and minerals that are paramount for health. So if someone has limited access to these fruits and vegetables, that means that they may choose the budget-friendly packaged foods or canned foods. So these foods are high in calories, but they're very limited in vitamins and minerals. Unfortunately, following this way of eating may catch up with a person, resulting in high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, or weight-related concerns. For school-age kids, this could result in poor attention or decreased performance in school. Fortunately, for Montana, we have wonderful individuals and organizations that really want to focus on and care for community food security. Their approach to hunger is through local food production, transformation, distribution, and access to nutritious foods. From this food system, we don't only focus on access to food, but also the education towards preparation and preserving of those foods. So we are pleased to have some representatives from these great organizations with us today, because they are doing the legwork and the groundwork for providing access to healthy, nutritious foods on a local basis. So I would like to introduce our lovely panel. So we have Aubree Roth, right here, with Montana Team Nutrition and Farm to School. And then we have Dylan Fishman with the town's Harvest Garden, MSU Student Farm. And then we have Kati Burton. She is a dietitian with CSKT Tribal Health Department. And then we have Megkian Doyle. She is with the Crow Reservation, raising places in lodge grass. And then we have Brenna Sellars. She is the outreach coordinator for FarmHands Nourish in Flathead Valley. And then lastly, we have Scott Brant. He is a food access and sustainability team, the FAST, which we heard about last night, in the Blackfeet Nation. So, who would like to start giving us a little, how about you? Give us a little bit of an overview of what you're doing just locally and how that can kind of move forward in Montana.
As it was stated, I was a marketing manager for Towns Harvest Garden for 2 years, and Towns Harvest Garden, for those who don't know, is Montana State University's the university's organic farm. It's a learning farm where students in the SFBS, or Sustainable Foods and Bioenergy Systems program, are required to take a practicum to learn the realities of growing food. So not only are they learning in a classroom, you're getting out for at least one summer and learning about what it takes to farm local organic vegetables. And as a part of that organization, we don't compete with a lot of local growers, so we don't sell into supermarkets, we don't sell at the local farmers market. We have our own farm stand, we have our own CSA program, and we work with other outlets so that we don't take income away from other farmers in the area. And as a part of that, we have to be very creative with how we can access our target market, because our target market is not the average consumer in Bozeman. And to do that, we reach the people who would otherwise not have access to the food that the growers here in Bozeman are mostly growing. So people who can't make it to the farmers markets, students on campus. And to do that, we have subsidized student shares, CSA shares, so for a much lower cost and probably the cheapest CSA in the Valley, if you're a student at MSU, you can purchase one of these shares and you get fresh local vegetables every single week of the summer for a certain amount of time. We also go into some of the Section 8 housing in Bozeman, where there are seniors who are living on stipends, who don't have access to be able to go to the farmer's market, might not be able to make it to a grocery store on a regular basis. And we set up in that housing complex a normal farmer's market with reduced prices. And we allow them also to use their senior farmer's market coupons there as well. We also promote WIC, accept WIC at our farm stands that are here on campus, and senior farmer's market coupons at that farm stand as well, though we see lower turnout at the farm stand because it's on campus than we do actually going into the housing complexes. And the amount of feedback we receive, positive feedback from both students and from seniors and other people who just come to our farm stand because they know it's there and they might be put off by going to a big farmer's market for whatever reason, whether it be the social aspect or whether it be the connotation of being at a farmer's market. They know where to go on campus to get local fresh foods, and students who are also just passing by the farm stand get interested and they walk up and they ask, what is this? Why are you here? And in some cases, how can I get involved and how can I get this every week? And then we can pitch. We have a student share. It's the cheapest vegetables you can get. All you have to do is ride your bike or drive your car quarter of a mile away and we're there for you. And as a part of that, I feel like we have brought a lot of awareness to food insecurity on campus. Friends of Local Foods is a club on campus that helped start Towns Harvest Garden, and that was part of their mission. And then also springing from that food momentum, we have the Bob Pantry on campus too, which is a food pantry, a food bank for students and people who can't leave campus or go too far to receive extra help. And Towns Harvest mission, I think, is growing really well. There's more student involvement every single year from people who are just interested, people who aren't in the SSBS major who want to participate and come learn what that's about, and then in turn learn about food security. And then also the farm stand and this Section 8 housing farmers market that we do has all been growing every year.
Thank you, Dylan.
So I work for FarmHands Nourish up in the Flathead Valley. It's an organization that started as trying to just get everyone in our community to have easier access to the local produce being grown by our local farmers. It's grown and changed a lot over the years, and so our current mission is to help build a strong community food system that fosters socially just ways of accessing food. So a lot of that means that we are at farmers markets doing a variety of programs. We run the backpack assistance program in Columbia Falls School District. We piloted the first, one of the first food prescription programs in Montana this year, partnered with the North Valley Professional Center. So we are accepting prescriptions at farmers markets through that program. We have the Blackfeet Nourish project with Scott, and I'm sure you'll talk more about that. So we do a lot of different food access programs. I came to be a part of FarmHands through AmeriCorps. I moved to Montana for AmeriCorps and eventually became a Food Corps service member. FarmHands as an organization really brings people together up in the Flathead, and so folks that are up there serving in Food Corps are always invited to kind of be a volunteer board member and learn what a small nonprofit in the community is doing. So I was lucky enough to get involved with FarmHands that way, and when I decided to stick around, I just kept staying until they gave me a job. So I'm just introducing myself,
definitely.
right?
Yep.
So FarmHands, we have a big reach. We work as far east as communities in Browning and as far west as communities in Eureka and Troy, really centrally located around Whitefish, Columbia Falls, and Kalispell. And a lot of our food access programs came out of seeing a need where no one else was really stepping up in the community. We have food banks in all three of our communities, but a lot of the mentality there is that this is the way it's always been done and this is the way we're going to continue doing it. And the board of FarmHands and everyone that is involved very much felt like that was not the way that we needed to continue moving forward. So keeping our mission of connecting people to our local producers, our local farmers, we started all of these programs to create that access for anyone regardless of income. And I think that's why I'm here today.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And Aubree? Well, hello everyone. I'm just so excited to be on this panel with these incredible people. I'm having a hard time thinking what are my points that I wanted to say, because I'm like, what are they going to say? It's great. So thanks for being here. I'm the Montana Farm to School coordinator with Montana Teen Nutrition Program. We're housed here at Montana State University. There's more Montanas than what I have to say, so buckle in. We get most of our funding through the Montana Office of Public Instruction, so we work really closely with them to be able to implement our programs, including the collaborative work that is Montana Farm to School. So my job is to really help schools throughout the state be able to implement Farm to School. For those of you unfamiliar with what that term is or what it looks like in our state, it involves connecting children to the source of their food through the 3 core elements, as National Farm to School Network defines it. Those core elements are first procurement, so buying or serving local foods in school meals or snacks. The education piece, so nutrition, ag, and food-based education, which can look very different. Farm field trips, hands-on, making recipes, exploring food, etc. And then that school gardens, or what I like to say, growing and raising food, because it's not just about gardens in Montana. In fact, Missoula County Public School District has a school farm, and they've been raising livestock there through their ag ed and FFA programs for a long time, and just recently they got a state-inspected slaughter and processing facility, which I think is one of the most Montana examples of farm to school you could come up with. So that's pretty neat that the students will be able to participate full circle and really understand what that looks like. So the Montana Farm to School is a collaborative effort, includes multiple different projects. One is the Montana Farm to School Leadership Team. So it's state agencies and state nonprofits that are coming together to increase collaboration and communication around farm to school throughout our state. We also have the Montana Harvest of the Month program, which is beyond schools, but it features a different Montana grown or raised food each month. So that's an excellent program. And I also have some materials too, if you are interested in different resources after. We just had Montana Crunch Time this Thursday. Who crunched into a locally or regionally grown apple? I had 2 crunches. Wow, okay, so next year, crunch time, people. There's a Mountain Plains Regional Crunch Off, so if you didn't register your crunch, please do that. There is a trophy. And we've been crunching since 2013, so I'm doing that. This month is also National Farm to School Month. So there's a lot of different things, but really my job is to provide that guidance and resource development to help schools and communities throughout our state. Okay, Ms. Aubree.
As Brenna mentioned, I am part of Nourish the Flathead through the Blackfeet Nourish project. But what I'm here to talk about is the FAST Blackfeet organization that I work with in Browning. I started going to Browning as part of the Blackfeet Nourish project, taking food in the Flathead that we got through food banks and through purchase of, from local farmers to the food bank at the time, and ultimately to the backpack program and the Medicine Bear Shelter, which serves lunch 5 days a week to the homeless and disadvantaged people. That word I'm not supposed to use, but people who don't have access to regular meals. And in 2015, I became part of the FAST organization, which FAST means Food Access Sustainability Team. And we saw that there were real gaps in food security on the reservation. There's 11,000 people, and on the reservation, they're concentrated in Hart Butte and Browning primarily, but there are outlying communities that are heavily impacted with food insecurity. One of the first things that we did in our realizing that we needed to, how to go about what we wanted to accomplish was to conduct a community-wide food assessment plan and survey. And that was done over the year 2016, 2017, and that resulted in this document here, the Blackfeet Reservation Community Food Security and Food Sovereignty Assessment. And that provided us with a real foundation for moving forward, understanding what the levels of food insecurity were on the reservation. What we found out from that was that, I hear you say that 11% in Montana is an average. Yep. We found on the reservation that 2/3, 67% of the people there are experiencing food insecurity. About 1/3, it's chronic insecurity, and that means you just really don't know where your next meal is coming from. Another 1/3 were food insecure part of the time, and that kind of means you're not really sure. Maybe the weekend's coming up and you don't have much food in the house, so you just don't really know where that food, your next meal, is coming from in that regard. Towards the last couple weeks of the month, it's particularly acute because benefits, paychecks, your resources are at a low, and so access to emergency food supplies is really important at that time. In 2018, we had a grant through the First Nations Development Institute to do a feasibility study for what we wanted to develop as using the Livingston Food Resource Center as a model to form the Blackfeet Food Resource Center. And if, for those of you who might not be familiar with this, Michael McCormick over in Livingston started the Resource Center a few years ago as a result of working with the food bank there. It's a wonderful model utilizing a food pantry, a commercial kitchen, and that commercial kitchen is essentially an educational facility and a processing facility for being able to buy local produce and turn it into food that is used in the pantry and is also used as an economic driver within the community. So we are modeling ourselves after that, and we work with a number of organizations on the that are working on the reservation, one of which is the Agricultural Resource Management Plan, which Lauren Birdradler and that fellow in the back, sitting back there, Will Seeley, have been working on. This is an overarching document and plan, a strategic plan for really integrating production, processing, distribution, and all aspects of the local food system on the Blackfeet Reservation, and it's an extremely ambitious and far-reaching plan. And I think, is it 1:30? Yeah, Lauren is going to speak on...
Exactly which room it's in, though.
2:35.
Okay. One of the things that the community food assessment also highlighted was there was a huge interest in moving towards a food sovereign food system. And some of you may understand there's food insecurity and there's food sovereignty. Food insecurity is not knowing where your food comes from. Food sovereignty is having control over your food system. And as Danielle Antelope last night spoke about, at one point, all people in this country were food sovereign. They had control of their food systems. They knew where they understood either growing the food or through hunting, through gathering plants. They kept themselves fed and healthy for thousands of years. And that is a direction that we would like to go, we've lost a lot of that and we want to move back into that arena. In this year, we conducted a strategic plan for Fast Blackfeet, and one of the first elements of that was to establish a food pantry that would be providing necessary food to people who needed it on a weekly basis. And I'm really happy to say that we opened on September 23rd in the Medicine Bear Shelter. They gave us a portion of their building to open the food pantry. And we've been open 9 days now. And let's see, we've served over 1,300 people and have distributed 14,000 pounds of food. So we're extremely nervous right now about some of these numbers. It's exciting. We're out there doing what we've been meeting and talking about for quite some time, and now we have to actually implement it. So our plate is full. We have other programs that are in the works, but this is the Oyop Food Pantry, which means in the Blackfoot language is we are eating. we believe that that's a very appropriate and apt name for what we're doing, and that's what we're doing right now. Our plate's full, and we hope to keep many other plates full for quite some time. Thank you.
My name's Megkian Doyle, and just so you know, I'm kind of not really speaking on my own behalf. I'm speaking on behalf of a whole team of people that I work with. There's a lot of people in Lodgegrass, so it is on the Crow Reservation. I'm not speaking for all Crow people, I'm not speaking for all Indian people, and I'm hopefully only speaking for my group in Lodgegrass and the values and things that we've been thinking really hard about. So the projects that we are working on in Lodgegrass, we began 3 years ago with a grant from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and we worked under a name called Raising Places. And so during that time, we did a family-centered design process in our community. And because family was really the core of what we, as a group, wanted to address. And so, you know, the people that are on my team, we have roots in Lodgegrass. It's our place, and a place that we love and care about. So you should also know that Lodgegrass is one of 6 districts in the Crow Reservation. Each district has its own uniqueness, and it's also the only incorporated district. So Lodgegrass is an incorporated city, so it's under both county and tribal jurisdiction, which sometimes is helpful and sometimes it's not helpful. But for the most part, it's helpful if we can find the right loophole. So in the process of doing the family-centered design, we talk to everybody in our community, even the people who are usually not getting talked to. And by that group, it's primarily people that are really struggling with substance abuse, and we're most of the time not surveying those people because they're not convenient, I think. So through that process, we found that we really, as a group, wanted to pursue an ecosystems model for our city in rebuilding our city. So our speaker this morning talked about, you know, undoing some things, and fortunately for us, in many ways, a lot of what we have has been undone completely. So we get to start from scratch in a lot of ways, but that's also a huge responsibility because it's the desire of the group to really build from a standpoint of values and things that are important to people. And one of those values that I think is really interesting, my husband is a Crow historian, so I get a lot of information about Crow history laying in bed at night when I'm trying to go to sleep. But so one of the interesting things about Crow history is that, you know, Crows were awesome agrarians, and you know, they were part of a mound building culture originally, and within that culture, as they became more successful agrarians, they started to stratify socially, and they recognized that as a value that they did not want to participate in, and so they chose to move, and that's how we ended up in Montana. And you associate most Plains Native people with being more nomadic and, you know, hunter-gatherers, and they chose to make a change in culture because the stratification that agriculture was creating. So I just think that that's kind of an interesting underpinning when we think about where we are now, because now, you know, our group is grappling with questions about, you know, how do we want to build what's important to us into the systems that we either build or choose to use. And so we have a lot of systems out there that deal with, you know, food insecurity. We have major food insecurity, a lot like the numbers that Scott talked about. In Lodgegrass, we have one store, which is the only remaining business. It was a little bit more thriving town before the coal industry. So when coal industry started, the road through Lodgegrass was not wide enough for coal trucks, and so they built the interstate way up above the town. So they rerouted most of the traffic, so nobody drives through Lodgegrass anymore. And at that time, there was this huge downturn in just the economics of the town, which is really common for most of, you know, eastern Montana, small town eastern Montana is, you know, feeling those same things. So we have one grocery store, and that one grocery store is, you know, relatively expensive because they have to be. They would like to use locally sourced things, like, you know, we're surrounded by ranchers, but we can't use that beef that's right there because it can't be USDA processed and put into our. And when we're thinking about that, it seems like an easy solution would be, yeah, let's just get a processing center. But it's not an easy solution because that's not how we want to use animals. And that's not how we want to use plants. And so when we think through how that works, it makes me choked up because you witness people that desperately need to be able to eat. And at the same time, they're still choosing a harder way to do it instead of taking an easy way to do it. To me, that's really super powerful. And so what happens in what we're trying to do is that we're building the whole system all at one time, because to the people that we're working with, food is support for recovery, it's support for bereavement, it's support for parenting, it's support for restorative justice, it's support for trauma mediation. And so if we choose to use a food system that is socially and spiritually and nutritionally bankrupt, we don't help ourselves. We have to create a food system that is also socially and spiritually going to feed us, because what you see on the reservation is a food system that's nutritionally minimal, that is not feeding a whole person, because it's not feeding the soul of people. Because within there, the beautiful food systems that we have there, which we're trying to rebuild, we've got grandparents educating their children while harvest is happening. We can't do that if we go to a food bank. Sorry. And we just have, we have people struggling with substance abuse, and their memory of being able to take care of their family as children was being able to help in gardens. And it's really important to me that those things come back into our culture. But it feels really, really hard to do. We're building a business incubator. We just got a grant for that, and it has a commercial kitchen in it. We're really excited about that because it's a place for people to do what they were made for, not for people to work in a business that will give them a job, because that's what we want poor people to do, just get a job. Everybody wants to do meaningful work. And that's what we want a place for, is for meaningful work. But we recognize that that's connected to whole family healing. We don't want our children leaving our home community. We want their parents to be able to provide for them. We want their parents not to be losing them because of neglect, because they can't feed their kids. Or because they can't provide housing for their kids. And those things are all strangely connected to this food system and this agrarian system, and it's so all hooked together that you feel like you have to build up the universe all at the same time. So we're trying to build a family healing center with family positive messaging campaigns, just to change the things that have been normalized about how we think about how we want to live. So those things are just, when we look at our past systems and our future systems, we do see a past system that was healthy. And we do see a past system that we can go back to, and that we can figure out how to bring forward those values into what we're doing. But we also have a past system that was happy not having surplus. We were happy that way. And, if we didn't have surplus, we shared with someone who did have a little bit of surplus. It wasn't mass surplus. And we don't feel like we have to have that massive surplus to consider ourselves successful. And so, when we look at that idea of having surplus or just having enough to survive, it really forces us to be balanced in how we think about how we're going to build these systems. And it is hard to involve people from outside because the drive is so hard, so heavy to become profitable. And within our own group, we don't need to be profitable if everybody can have what they need. And I think that is also a definition of profit. That's also a definition of wealth. If we can have those things that we need, that is a definition of wealth that's really important to have. Totally didn't plan on crying through this whole talk, but here I am. So, anyway, right now the wealth is concentrated away from where we live, but we also have some of it. We just need to figure out the systems for building it, and I think we're figuring those things out one step at a time. And it's really tough work because we're totally committed 100% to relationship within building the whole thing. And so, number one, that means that we're choosing to love each other no matter what. And secondly, that we're not going to be offended. So it's really easy to get offended in this stuff, and because we have values on the line and you have these kind of perspectives on the line. It's, building a community is relationship work comes first. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Megan.
Sorry.
No, I relate a lot to what Megan is saying, and my name is Kati Burton, and I just want to say that I'm so grateful for being here and to hear what Megan just said and what the rest of this panel is doing, and listening to Dr. Salvador this morning. There's a lot going on in our world that divides us, and food has the power to bring us together. And I get to work with the Salish Kootenai people every day up on the Flathead Reservation, and we are a medical group. So I kind of come from a little bit different aspect here as a medical professional. I'm a dietitian, but I work with a group of nurses and community health representatives and social workers who operated for a couple years under the, and we still are, under the THIP program, which is the Tribal Health Improvement Program, which is a wonderful opportunity for us to rethink healthcare. And one of the big things that our nurses and social workers and community health representatives recognized before they hired me is that food is something that is truly, there's a different definition to it everywhere you go. And they would be going into homes, because largely we're home visiting operation, and it would just be stockpiled with the packaged commodity foods that have nothing to do with nourishing the families that live in these homes. And the commodity program is changing. And there are more traditional foods being added to this program. So it is something that has some potential to grow and actually work with the recipients, the people that are actually supposed to be the ones eating this food, so that it can change. But we have so much work to do, and I feel so happy to be somebody working in the traditional medical field, to be out in the public, just kind of gauging what's going on out there and not hiding in the clinic, because our people are very, very sick. And I'm inspired to come to work every day because my Native friends are dying 20 years younger than their white counterparts. And it makes me really emotional too, because it's just unjust when you look at our history and the way that we forget what happened. And I want it to be a space where we can acknowledge it, and we can create spaces where we can grow seeds that are ancestral, and not just the seeds that are hybrid, which is also important too. But a lot of the foods that are donated are not recognized by the people I work with. And so one of the largest challenges I have is, and absolutely, Scott, we definitely need to bring the food to the people as much as possible. But there is a lack of knowledge of what to do with it, right? And so there's an abundancy of food around us. I don't think that there's a lack of food. It's what is the food? What is the quality food? Is it culturally appropriate? Do me as an individual eater recognize this as something that is going to nourish my body? Because when I ask people, just like when Fast Blackfeet asked Browning, what are your traditional foods? And of course, bison and berries come up, but also fry bread come up. That is a food that their mother lovingly made for these families, and I respect that. So let's bring all this knowledge to the table and understand what is going to nourish our bodies, and just make those as abundant as possible. And as a dietitian, I know all the sciencey stuff, but in my everyday work, I need to create spaces where we can just get together, learn how to cook these foods, help our neighbors have the resources to actually prep them, because many of the families I work with don't have a cutting board or a knife. But that's okay, because we do have the abundancy. Let's bring the food into the home. Let's make a meal together. I get to do this all the time. We can use the farmer's market, even though that's kind of a scary place to go to for a lot of folks. But we are lucky to have 4 of them on the Flathead. So, let's make these places equitable, approachable, kind of not seeing the color, as Dr. Salvador is saying, but, just being a human race that is compassionate. And I think more than ever, food has the power to do that. And if we can emphasize to those frontline people, like medical providers, like our doctors that see these families every single day, the importance of nourishing food, that will make the difference. And it's all part of it. Even the people bringing the food to the food pantries, what food is at the food pantry? Let's work together to figure out what that food's gonna be. So as the Tribal Health Improvement Program, I think the state of Montana recognized that our healthcare system isn't working. People are very sick, especially on our reservations. There's gotta be a way to have individuals that are highly skilled actually out of the clinic in the community working on social matters that will help bring our children up to speed, have them have equal access to quality food and quality education, quality opportunities. They shouldn't have to hire a white dietitian. Let's work with the dietetic internship and make sure that there are Native peoples that can come into this profession and do the work that I do. So, yeah, that's my soapbox, but that's me.
Thank you. So, I was going to ask you guys questions, but I would actually like to just open it up to the audience, just so that we have enough time. So does anybody have a question that they would like to ask the panel as a whole, or individuals? Yes, sir.
I've got several, but I won't dominate.
Well, probably you might have time.
Well, one for Brenna. You mentioned a food prescription. I'm unfamiliar with what a food prescription is.
Thank you. I had that question too.
Great, yeah. So FarmHands partnered with North Valley Hospital and North Valley Professional Center, which is a doctor's office in Columbia Falls, to start a food prescription program. So we have one practitioner currently, and patients that she sees that are dealing with ailments like diabetes and obesity and malnutrition and anemia, they are getting prescriptions. They look like any other prescription, and we accept them at the 3 farmers markets that we are at. So FarmHands runs a food access booth in Whitefish, Columbia Falls, and Kalispell, and we do other programs like SNAP and Double SNAP dollars and senior coupons and school coins, which are the senior coupon program we do is our own. And now this past summer was the first year where we did a food prescription program. So people came, I am the person at all of the farmers markets. So they came to me and they brought their prescription. And the way that it worked is that we had the funding this summer to give $7 per person in the family every week. So we had a family of 1, we had families of 2 and 3, and that we had a family of 9. So that family of 9 got was able to get $63 a week to spend on fresh fruits and vegetables at the farmers market. So the first week that they came, I hopefully had a volunteer, and so I left my booth and I walked them through the whole market. The markets in our valley up there are 3 very, very different places. The Whitefish Farmers Market is like crafts and food and a lot of things going on. The Columbia Falls Market is a party. It's in the parking lot of a liquor store. So there's live music and a party, and there's a little area with 2 farmers and a lot of food trucks. So it's a very different vibe. And then Kalispell is the shopping market. People come there and they shop and they do their business and they go home. And so I introduced them to farmers, to vendors, and they came and shopped every single week for fresh fruits and vegetables. The point of me walking around with them that first day is to reduce the intimidation of a farmer's market. It is, as Kati as Katie was saying, farmers markets can be really intimidating places, especially for folks coming from generational poverty or generations of people that don't know how to cook fresh produce. And so we also gave out recipes seasonally that showed how to use some of the produce that was available during the season. So it started off with things like, you know, the cucumbers and tomatoes. We have a hydroponic house, so we had those really early up in Kalispell. And now it's things like leeks and winter squash. So we gave out recipes. We've had extra in our budget. So a lot of our recipes used lemon juice and olive oil. So we found extra in our budget to get big, like Costco size lemon juice and olive oil for every family. Every single family told me that they'd never had olive oil in their house before. Yeah, it was for a pilot year, it was an amazing experience. The first couple weeks that families came, the discomfort over buying vegetables was very apparent. The concern about not being able to spend the money that they were given because they don't eat that much produce in a week was there. And we did surveys every week, and every single family started off saying that they ate vegetables 0 to 2 times a week. And by the end of the season, almost every family was up to 5 to 7 times a week. And you know, the most difficult part of all of this is that the farmers market season has ended up there. We don't have a winter market. And so figuring out how to make this program continue outside of our farmers market season is something we're working on. But yeah, I think the food prescription program was one of the biggest, the most important programs this summer as far as increasing comfort around fresh produce, affordability around fresh produce. Yeah. And this one client, we don't really get to know their names super well. I think they kind of come feeling that we are, you know, like a pharmacist, you know, that more of that relationship. But she, in the beginning, was really against this. She and her husband are raising their great-granddaughter, and no vegetables, maybe canned or frozen vegetables in the house. And so the prescription was actually for the great-granddaughter. She wasn't being nourished enough. And this woman, she was really tough to work with. I wasn't sure that she was going to keep coming. The first couple times she would get upset with me that the money was only for fresh fruits and vegetables. And by the end, because she knew farmers market season was ending, she not only went to her regular markets in Columbia Falls, but made the trip to Whitefish and made the trip to Kalispell in order to stock up on produce. So we saw some real turnaround in people, and we only had enough funding this season to do enough for 30 people, and that is, you know, everyone in a family. And so we only had 7 families over the course of the season, but it was a really big turnaround for everyone that I saw.
Could I just ask a quick follow-up? And so does the person have to go to a dietitian like Katie or yourself to get like a written prescription and then bring it to you? Is that how that works?
Right now we're working with one doctor's office and one practitioner in that doctor's office. She's a nurse practitioner that and these are her patients. I believe there was, you know, she's seeing folks. She was choosing out of her patients that she sees regularly the folks that are struggling with nutrition-based issues.
Do you plan to get more doctors or practitioners on board?
That would be fantastic. It's finding funding has been tricky, is tricky. A lot of grants and funders want us to find a way to charge insurance companies for this to make it sustainable. But, you know, if people are paying for their insurance and then we're giving them free money, there's, you know, it's a tricky thing. So finding funding is a huge priority, and we've written a few grants and we haven't gotten them, and so we're working with grant holders and people in the hospital foundation to try and figure it all out.
It's for Brenna too. Is there a way, I'm a farmer in Whitefish and I work with Brenna a lot and Scott. But is there a way for you to do like the RX and the all of the coins at like, if I opened up my farm, you know, once a month, because I kind of do anyway, but like, could I take those coins?
That's something we should definitely talk about, yeah. And something we are working on with the food prescription program. So in those 3 towns, there is a Super One grocery store in all 3 towns, and so we are working on getting that grocery store to maybe accept that and have coupons like they already accept for WIC and be under the WIC guidelines and stuff. But you know, that produce is not the farm fresh produce that they've been getting all summer, and we all know that there's a difference there. So
Yes.
I have a question for Megan, and I guess just a little bit, I'd like to hear more about the Raising Places project and a little bit more of where it is now and what, I mean, it was granted about 2017.
Yeah, so 2017, yeah, I think, is when we got the family-centered design grant. And out of that design process, when we worked with our community, over 9 months we refined what the feedback that they gave us and to send it back to them and have them look at it again and all that kind of stuff. And then out of that came 9 different things that we wanted to work on that were part of an ecosystem, a healthy ecosystem. And from that point, we've gotten several different grants, some from the state of Montana for developing knowledge about business and how to start business and things like that. And then we have gotten some from the Montana Healthcare Foundation. Right now we just finished the feasibility study for the Family Healing Center. So the Family Healing Center is like a campus project. It's like a village basically in small form. And it is used to meet families before their kids would go into foster care. And then it provides, so people want to kind of label it a treatment center. If you wanted to label it a treatment center, it wouldn't be for substance abuse, it would be for trauma, because substance abuse is a symptom. And so it's more focused on helping whole families to bring healing in whatever areas they need it, so that they can function well as a family, but it puts them in a supported ecosystem, so the ecosystem itself is healthy, and then it puts them into that healthy system. So it does involve food, nature, you know, family, community, multi-generations, and things like that that are all in one space. And then it also involves integrated healthcare, access to healthcare. So right now we're just moving into the development phase. Hopefully we'll be getting a grant to do the development for that. And then the positive messaging campaign has just different phases that we've done at different times. So the high school, all the bathroom stalls have happy things in them. You know, so there's kind of some smaller things, but they're all things that were generated by the community. We also have a pay it forward home and yard renovation. So there are no homes in Lodgegrass that, you know, when you get an evaluation of the federal sort or whatever, I forgot what they're called, but there are none that are good or excellent. So everything is fair or poor in Lodgegrass for housing. But we moved one brand new house into Lodgegrass, and so we didn't have any heavy equipment, so it was the middle of winter and we were shoveling out the foundation for this house by hand. It took a while, but we got a new house in and it has a deck on it now, and we just decided, okay, if we have to do it one lot at a time, we'll do it one lot at a time so that we can change how we see ourselves. And then one of the big things that we've done that looks really small when you don't understand what it is, there's a store that was in Lodgegrass for a long time that has a lot of memories to it. It's called Cozy Corner. And it burned down while I was the one lacing it. It wasn't my fault though. It was a really interesting experience. It was about 20 years ago, actually. The whole store burned down, and I looked through the window, and everything was burned but the back of this book, and it said "Love is a Decision" on the back of the book. So anyway, good lesson for me. Did really try to carry that one on. But it was a really important place for people to gather socially. It was just a store. You could get hamburgers there, and penny candy is something. But it was a really healthy social and community connection, a really deep one. And so we filled in the hole that was left from that, because it was just a dangerous place for kids to play is what it ended up being. And we had enough money for one load of fill, which once it was poured in, filled about this much at the corner of the basement. And so miraculously, somehow 9 more loads of stuff came and filled in the hole. So then we built a picnic area on top of that and surrounded that whole park with native plants that the people in the community valued, that they were sort of losing the ability to identify in the wild. And so most of them are wild plants that are planted in that space. And the kids did all the planting, which is awesome, because there's little signs there that the kids wrote themselves that say, "You can pick the berries, please don't pick the plants." It's so cute. And they're little defenders of that space, and they have to be pretty vigilant, because there are morning glories that just over the top of them all the time. So anyway, that is just sort of was a really small way of saying we want to build back in these values and that value of adults and children together in the planting and the harvesting of that space was really valuable. And so as soon as we put that in, you can see in Facebook the messages that people sent saying, like, I thought I was never going to live in a place like this. And all we did was that little park in the corner. Thought I never was going to be able to see the place that I live in, have these experiences again. And I didn't think that, I would ever want to come back. And now there's a lot of people. We have 70 new students in the school district in 1 year. Because people are coming back because Lodgegrass is their home. And actually, more than 50% of the chiefs for the Crow Reservation, for the Crow Tribe, have come from Lodgegrass. So it had a pretty major history that it's coming back from. If you talk to people now, right before we started our work anyway, my father-in-law is a former chairman. He just laughed. He said, "You should just bulldoze that place and start over." Because people kind of thought of it as like the last worst place, because it's rough. It's a rough place because it's just been hard for a long, long time. So anyway, we've done that, and then, I didn't mean also to say that food banks are bad in any way, but what I do mean to say is that you have to build social and spiritual context back into those things. And so one of the ways we're trying to do it is, I also am the director for the Rural Health Opioid Project in Bighorn County, and so we're using funding to support parenting, because more people are quitting their substance abuse on their own. The number one reason to do that is parenting, and so we're really investing in native parenting. So we have this crock-pot club. We give the families a crock-pot and a set of dishes to eat together. And we are accessing Center Pole, which is kind of like fast. And then we are also using Helping Hands in Hardin. And so we take it's women that are participating in the project, and it's monthly at the beginning of the month, right when SNAP benefits come out. So they go to Center Pole first, and then they go to Helping Hands, and then they shop for whatever's left. And we have a big list of all the groceries that are required to make dinner for 30 days. And so in our community, what this is ensuring is that everybody is having the foods that they want, and I'm saying that they want, even though it's also what we want, because they are the ones who said we want to eat differently. So all of those are built into those meals, and they, I lost my train of thought for a second there, sorry. And then we also have men's hunting teams that are going out. They go with Center Pole to harvest bison. One of the reasons we can't use the USDA processing center is because we can't use crow processing methods according to how they do it, and we don't want to lose those, and so we're trying really hard to do it in that way, and so Center Pole helps do that, and so that gives dads access to their parenting role as leaders in the family, and doing what they used to be able to do, and to provide for those meals that women are putting together. It also allows kids in our community to eat, even if their parents don't have the capacity to get up and turn on the crock pot. So kids can, I have twin boys that are 6. They can take the food out of the freezer, dump it in the crock pot, and turn the crock pot on and have food after school. So that's another thing that we're kind of falling back on.
Does the commercial kitchen have like a section where you can process meat that's
Well, our commercial kitchen has nothing yet because we're still in the process of getting built. We just got the grant for it, and it's surprisingly slow because our USDA person has never built a business incubator before, so it's a bit of a slow process, and we haven't actually broken ground yet to build that. But yes, we would like for it to have a place to process. And right now, Center Pole allows us to come in, like if they get a great big shipment of one kind of vegetable, and it's on our list of grocers for this 30 crock-pot meals, we can come in, I can bring my own staff in and chop all of it and put it in the freezer. And then it's kind of just hanging out waiting for the following month. And the reason we do it on the monthly cycle is with the SNAP benefits is because our one store, we don't want it to close. It's the only thing that's there. But they were frustrated because they felt like they were complicit in the drug trade that happens in our community because SNAP, they've removed the name off of the card so it only has a number, and I totally get that that's for privacy of the individual, but that allows the cards to be traded and for the store not to be able to say that's not your card, you can't use it that way. And so that's the reason that we build it in right at the beginning of the month, is to get the money off the card for what it's intended for. Yeah.
This is a question for all of you who work with the reservations. What are some other indigenous foods that we're trying to put on the plate besides berries and wild meat?
That's a really good question. And it's a question that we're working on right now across many different organizations and institutions, and MSU is actually doing a lot of great work with this too, partnering with Salish Kootenai College and also the Tribal Fisheries Program. Native fish were something that it has been a food that has been eaten if people lived along the Flathead, but unfortunately a lot of native fish are not around anymore. So there are efforts to bring back at least the fish, and also foods that grow along the riparian buffer. So a lot of these foods are still in existence, and a lot of the elders that I work with, they still use them for teas and medicines and as greens as part of the meal, something that you would cook with like a wild game. Up in the mountains, like the Mission Mountains, there are a lot of wild roots and greens that also grow, and herbs, and again, for medicines or food. And so I always look to these folks to kind of bring this to the forefront so that that knowledge can spread. But honestly, my biggest challenge right now is that a lot of these are family knowledge that doesn't really necessarily want to be shared. So the challenge, I think, for like the college wanting to introduce more traditional foods from our area, or like Two Eagle in Pablo wants to have an entirely traditional food menu. We have a lot of family secrets. And so what is going to be on that menu? And so I've been talking to the chef, and she is just, I don't know, we can't have elk every day. So roots, flowers, greens, herbs, definitely all kinds of wild game and wild bird, like fowl, and fish is definitely coming to the forefront. And I think it will become a place of understanding that nobody's trying to take any of your memories or things that you hold so dear to your family, so that we can just share with the community at large. So that's my understanding at this point.
I'd like to ask Danielle, because Danielle conducted a couple of camps this summer around traditional foods and introducing traditional foods to the camp.
This was just away all the time. And it's fine. I think it's important that we look beyond our region. So yes, our region has buffalo and berries, but plus 200 more plants. So it's not just using what we know or what's at the surface, but relearning those plants. There's so many roots that we have to reintroduce back into our knowledge. But not just our region, but recognizing that all indigenous food systems were not only sustainable, but a nutritious diet. So not being like, oh, we're only gonna eat our region, and as Blackfeet, oh, I'm only gonna eat Great Plains traditional foods, but recognizing that blue corn and the Three Sisters method, all of these different foods are nutritious. All of these different foods were first foods to a nation, and I think it's recognizing that. I really appreciate how Chef Sean Sherman and how Mariah Gladstone with Indigi Kitchen, they use all indigenous ingredients, and they teach about how all of these indigenous ingredients came from right here on this land. So I think when we start to talk about incorporating indigenous foods, I think MSU does it well with their indigenous foods nights because they incorporate all foods. They take foods from different regions and put it into one plate and make that a meal. I think it's important that we look beyond our region and don't stigmatize what indigenous foods are based on which land we're standing on, but realize across the nation and also into Mexico, into Canada, what foods were there and how the importance of peppers, the importance of wild rice, all of those are indigenous foods. So we have a wide variety and a very nutritious option when we go into indigenous foods.
Can I add to that just real quick? So Lauren Burdock, I'm a dietitian as well. And so when we think about it from a policy perspective, we're also looking at the reserve rights of tribes, right? So when you think about this area, this was a part of the original Blackfeet Nation, the very first Blackfeet Reservation, right? To Kahapi, Yellowstone River, to the Dakotas, right? And so as you look at the public spaces in those areas, we're also looking at entering into MOUs with public lands managers, so we have more of an influence on the management of those public lands. But more importantly, as you look at the Crow case, right, that went out with the Supreme Court that really upheld the right to hunt and gather and fish, right, on treaty rights, that upheld treaty rights. We're looking at how we can utilize that as a foundation to really expand access to all of those other species that we don't currently have available to us in 1.5 million acres. So as you look at the ability to recognize the Blackfeet hunting license, fishing license, gathering permit on public lands in our original Blackfeet Reservation after the Lane Bowl Treaty, that's 2/3 of Montana. And so as we look at moving into those spaces, right, it's very important, to think about access. So as we think about keeping foods affordable, right? But the other is that we're also, in the middle of a beef bison processing plant, that really looks at and explores putting that nutritious meat back into our local food delivery system, probably at cost, right? So as you look at, the co-op village, we want to sell, here, right? We want to sell to them, right? But at the very end of the day, people, especially SNAP recipients, need to have access to affordable food, right? And so, because they can't afford that $18 lunch at the co-op, right? So as we think about keeping foods affordable, we need to think about how we utilize policy to move into that space as well.
I just wanted to touch too on the cultural camps. I just realized that's what you wanted me to talk about. Sorry. We hosted some cultural camps. I was one of the head organizers on that. And at the cultural camps, we partnered. So I had this really great idea and this funding for a youth camp for traditional foods. I wanted to take them on the land. I wanted to show them plants that were used for medicines. I wanted to show them sustainable harvesting practices, not taking the whole root, and also feed them this nutritious traditional diet. But when it came down, and I collaborated with another group that was, their camp was focused on substance abuse and historical trauma. We were perfect. I could do the foods there at the same time as we talked about with importance and the history of why we even need to reintroduce these foods into our lives. And when it came to making the menu, that was the hardest because I thought the same way. I was like, okay, we're gonna have buffalo every single day, and then it was just like blank. And then so we were all sitting there, our team, trying to figure out what our menu was gonna be. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, let's just use all indigenous ingredients. And then we started building our menus. And when it came to the camps, when we serve our bundle holders first, and our holy people and our elders, and then slowly get to the youth. I kept having the question, where's the napayin? Where's the bread? And so we had to do a history lesson every single day at lunch. We had to talk about where's the bread and where did the bread come from? And then we incorporated, so I was like, okay, they need something with their stew. So we did blue corn chips. And then we talked about the importance of blue corn to the southern tribes. We talked about the importance of nutrients in food, why it's blue and not yellow. And this helped, it planted a seed in my community to start to think like that. We used the terms survival foods and traditional foods, and we tried to make those distinctions of what those are. And we have 3 more years of camps to go, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
So we have time for one more question. Yeah, I know, time's flying. This is good.
I was just going to say, along with the thoughts about the food present, helping Native people to preserve their foods is important too. Like, we've been trying to grow hidatsa corn on an all-organic farm just right outside of Crow, and the nearest other corn farm is a mile away, and we still are getting their GMOs and our genetic, and we don't want to use it, in a broad way without that. It's really hard to preserve the food that we have traditionally with what we have around in the environment, so that's important.
Megan, you spoke at one point about people not being offended. You being offended, or the people you're working with?
We just have an agreement among all of us. When we're working, we're just going to try really hard not to get offended, because it's hard work, and people are passionate about what they do, and it's really easy, when you're working on these things, because everybody's coming at it from their perspective. That's what I love about Indigenous communities, is that they're okay with that. You can believe something completely different than me, and we're going to be okay. And so we're just learning to move through that, and it's just, when you do this kind of work, you need a lot of partners, and you're not going to all share this exactly same stream of thought, but you have to find a way to move forward together, and at the bottom of it, it's got to be on behalf of loving people that we do it. And so we call it being buttonless. We sit through meetings and we don't let things push buttons. We think about them, we learn through them, we process them, which is kind of, I guess it's the basic part of critical discourse, right, that we have in conversations. So that's what I really mean.
If I can just add something to that, I'm Jill Falcon-Mackin, and I'm for Mountain Ojibwa. I work with the Blackfeet on the Native Land Project in the ARP. And I study Indigenous food systems and the changes to our Indigenous food systems over time, 1780 to 1920 is my dissertation work. One of the things I'd like to add as context to the discussion is that our food systems traditionally were highly complex, with hunting and harvesting, wild harvesting and cultivation and trade being a really important part of things. And there's a lot of historical stereotypes about us being warring peoples amongst each other, and those are just false. Those are not what our ceremonies teach. They're not what our elders teach. They're not what the stories say. I think that's a created idea of savage and uncivilized people. We cooperated with each other traditionally, and there's a reason why when Lewis and Clark pulled into the Mandan Hidatsa Rikarawa homeland and needed supplies, that they were able to take on 2,500 pounds of corn there, because they were in the market, they were trading amongst Indigenous people, and a highly sophisticated market of reciprocal trade. So now we're in this time of how do we, as we've all been separated and put onto land that sometimes is not very conducive to harvesting and agriculture, how do we bring that element back in? How do we reconnect with trading partners? So we're coming up with things like, how do we bring agricultural, Indigenous agricultural products into the market with one another in this different market that we're in, this capitalist market that we're in? And then how do we just reinvent our food system as 21st century people, So we're rethinking everything, and culture and people and plants, everything is evolving, and at a very rapid rate because of climate change right now. So there's those challenges, but I think that the history of what we have and the way that we adapted and worked together is what we're trying to bring to the story right now. And I think Native identity is really wrapped up in that, what you were saying, of agreeing to get along. Backdrop is that we've been very divided against each other by this question of blood quantum, the horrible, bloody question of blood quantum, and how much, who's enough? who's enough? And so being traditional or being not traditional, who's the right amount of Indian, who's enough Indian? Those questions are a backdrop of the historical trauma of people. And so we're very carefully coming back into this and integrating our traditional ways as we pick up our bundles, pick up our knowledge, pick up our plant knowledge, and try to move into a healthier space, following a lot of division and a lot of colonization that's really divided us from each other and our traditions and our food systems. It's not that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we really probably do have time for one more question. So does anyone have one more? Yes, Amelia.
I wanted to ask the entire panel, but I don't know if there's enough time, so hopefully the conversation continues. And I wanted to remind everyone to go back to those yellow poster boards in the ballroom and include your name and contact info if you want to be connected with someone, whether you see a missing link in your community or if you can provide something for a missing link, because we really want the Expo to be a place to connect people. But I wanted to ask the whole panel what kind of partnerships you'd like to see in the future, because I know some of you mentioned a lot of really key partnerships within your community or across Montana. And maybe so a look to the future, what kind of partnerships you'd like to make through.
Should we start one at a time?
Sure, yeah.
Quickly do that.
Yeah, at least here, speaking for Bozeman, I think having land partnerships so that beginning farmers can have a chance to experiment and fail without it completely ruining them is really important. We have really fertile soil here. We have a good season, and there are a lot of knowledgeable people in this community. And I would love to see more partnerships that take the form of a mentor-mentee relationship with space for people to mess up and experiment and find how they want to do what they're going to do and how it's going to be best for the community.
FarmHands has a lot of really incredible partners in our community as far as like the hospitals and all of the farmers and the markets. And I think as far as doing what we do better, the main place that we need more partners are with philanthropists and people within the community recognizing what we're working towards. We just recently had a dinner with a bunch of folks, and we had the homeless student liaison for Columbia Falls, and we had our practitioner for the food prescription program, and we were talking about all these things and in an attempt to raise money. And all of these people that live in our community don't know the extent to which we're dealing with homeless youth and homeless everyone and food insecurity and people. We service the canyon on the way to Glacier, those little towns up there, Martin City, Hungry Horse, Quorum, and those communities are very small and very few grocery stores and the ability to actually get transportation there. And so I think partnership with people that can be advocates for what we're trying to accomplish.
We really welcome partnerships across the board. That's the beauty of Farm to School. It really brings in a lot of stakeholders. But one area that I think we really need to work on are those agricultural producers, distributor connections and partnerships. And so I do welcome all of you, and then anyone within that or other realms, to join the working groups of the Farm to School leadership team. That's a new thing that we're trying to bring in, those local voices across stakeholder groups. And especially at our Montana Farm to School Summit coming up in September 2020 in Helena, that would be a great place to be able to connect those voices and really lift them up.
My focus with the Fast Blackfeet tends to be along the food distribution lines. Is how will we get food to people, and my way of thinking, that's opening up the window of opportunity for then introducing foods that are truly healthy and truly culturally relevant. And the partnerships that we formed in Browning and on the reservation with the Indian Health Service, as I mentioned, the ARMP, the Browning Public Schools, and their feeding programs, those are all very important. But I think what Brenna was alluding to is I would like more of a opportunity to sit down with donors and people, or as Michael McCormick back there likes to say, investors in your community, to explain the importance of funding these programs and being able to actually make them not a giveaway program, but a way to regenerate and build economic opportunity within our region. So I don't know what that may be, a round table of, I know Hope Mountain brings together some donors and philanthropists to talk about these things, but maybe opportunities like that would be really helpful.
I think there's two things that would be helpful. Number one is that when funding is available, or if philanthropists want to participate, I think structures that allow Native people to determine how they're going to set up what they would like to be funded are important, because right now we have to bend a lot of what our community would like to do to fit, government models for, or philanthropy has ideas about how they want things to be used, and really allowing Native people to be in the driver's seat of that is, I think, important behind funding. The second thing that I think is important is access to internships for our Native students and people growing into these positions, because like the map you saw with 98% of people in agriculture being white, if Native people have access to that knowledge that sort of becomes privileged knowledge over time, then they're able to do that leadership in their own company, in their own communities, and in a lot of war-torn countries, they'll use a model that's called the link model. While cultures are trying to rebuild themselves, someone with knowledge will come in with the intention that they're not going to stay, that they'll leave as soon as they can raise someone up in the community that can do that job. And I just think that there are a lot of really skilled, really powerful Native people, Native students that have dreams of being able to do stuff, and they just need a door opened for them. And as non-Native people, we're able to do that. We're able to hold the door open. And we need to do that more. And if anybody knows Michael Smith from that movie, The Need to Grow, I really have a student that I wanted to mentor him. So if you know him, help me contact him. I messaged him on Facebook and he didn't call me back. I have 6 days before I can write this nomination for $3,000 for this student. So if you know him, hook me up.
Just to kind of tag onto Scott and Megan, there are a lot of projects happening in my area, whether most of the time they're not Tribal Health Department, unless it's something related to substance abuse. But the community has a lot of things going on that are grant funded, and it's not necessarily sustainable. So we have great projects happening all the time centered around health and food, and then they have to kind of switch gears to satisfy a different grant. So I really would love to partner with some strategy thinkers on how to kind of take that system that we have right now and make it more sustainable. I know with the THIP program, we have consistent funding from the state. It is not grant funded. So how can we use our programmatic monies to help these local organizations really make it work? I want to partner with people like Lauren and Will and remind me of your name. Is it Amelia?
Danielle.
It is Danielle. Okay. Because Browning's got a lot of cool things going on. Like, you guys are killing it. So in terms of policy, we really need to work on policy for CSKT, for Salish Kootenai, because there is a lot of energy without direction and structure. So I'd like to see that happen. Our schools work with organizations like Food Corps, but that ends and the students leave. You know, how can I work with Montana Farm to School more often so that all of the elementary schools have access to this fresh fruit and vegetables, and all the Head Starts can do Harvest of the Month, and our teenagers in the high schools, they want to work in the food system along the line, somewhere as a farmer or as a producer, as somebody who is working in kitchens or starting their own food-based businesses. I want to understand who these people are that can just kind of help me open doors and just kind of help these teens and people that have a lot of potential that are just wondering what to do, or they're going to move away. So let's keep our communities resilient. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Well, I want to thank the panel and the audience for the fantastic questions and conversation. Now it's lunchtime. Then we will get back together for our 1:30 sessions. So enjoy lunch, and thank you again for being here.